Kuna waya zile tulikuwa tumepitisha chini. Mapato zingine tumepitisha kwa nyumba tu karibu na mabati.
Najua hiyo waya kwanza iliunganisha na waya bonde. Jikapiga mtoto.
Tunajua ni danger. Lakini ikifika wakati saidi uko chini, kuna familia hapo, nyumba ndio hiyo inakudai, watoto wanataka kuenda shule, na unaona hiyo ndio inaweza kutolea kuliko kuenda kunyonga watu. Experience tuko nayo ni kazi tu tunakosa.
The dangers for people living in that area are much more pronounced than for many other Kenyans.
Illegal connections, being illegal as they are, will never be safe.
Nani? Uko na shughuli mingi sana ya pesa. So, usianze kujilamba wakad.
Ni vigumu makarau kupata watu. Number 2, makarau pia wanakulia.
One of the things that anybody who understands the governance of the informal settlements is that there are people who really benefit from this level of inequality and this level of deprivation. And those people are the slumlords.
Kenya has a population of over 47 million people. Depending on the city, approximately 6 out of 10 residents live in the informal settlements. Nairobi, Kenya's capital city with an estimated population of over 4 million, is home to 2 of Africa's largest slums.
Located about 6 kilometers from Nairobi's central business district, Kibera is a vibrant but densely populated neighborhood. It is one of the many informal settlements in the city and the country, but it's also the biggest slum in Africa.
You look at the informal settlement and say, this is a failure public policy. Because if you had functional urban planning, policies around human settlements and the development of spaces where people live, you would not have the slums at the level and squalor that you have today.
Characterized by limited or lack of access to basic necessities, the grim reality of the people living in these poor urban neighborhoods is evident at first sight.
Huku kunaitwa Kibera. Huku magwitaga atia laini ino ndikane laini neo gwitagwo laini saba huku tugwita Karũĩ.
Over the years, Kenya's urban population has increased considerably, but so has the gap between supply and demand of essential urban services.
The thing about this is that actually it's not just affecting poor people, but it's also affecting, working people and middle-class people. An area like Kilimani, for example, can go without water for 3 or 4 days, and then we discovered that actually it wasn't rationing. It was just that somebody went around and switched off all the taps the pipes in order to allow for private bowsers to service this community.
For the last 25 years, we have not developed the water sources. The water we use here was supposed to be used for the town, in this town, up to the year 2000. So from 2000, the population growth plus the urban migration, plus the industries which have come up, we don't have their water. That's why we ration the water.
The impact of urbanization and overpopulation is being felt across the city, but those living in the overcrowded slums have long endured it.
Sasa pipe, si unaona watoto lazima wachezee huku. Si unaona sasa pipe za maji zimekaa sasa ikifungwa. Sasa kama hii vyenye imekaa hivi zimeraruka. Maji ikiisha ikiingia hapo si ni uchafu.
So long as you keep a certain segment of the population poor, desperate, struggling, where they think that things like water, sanitation, electricity, access, even in terms of just physical roads and grids and how you get in and out, where you keep them realizing or feeling that they're so on the fringe of society that these things are not even basic services that they should aspire to, then you keep them poor, desperate, and willing to do anything to access that drop of water or that electricity that they so desperately need to do what they need to do on a daily basis.
This exemplified neglect of the informal settlements has a history entrenched in colonial systems dating back to when Africans could only live in Nairobi as registered workers. It was until 1963, when Kenya gained high independence, that Africans were granted the right to live anywhere in the country. But by then, people had already been flocking to the city in thousands, looking for jobs and other opportunities, giving rise to the growth of these distinct but almost certainly forgotten settlements.
You know, urban public safety is critical now. In many ways, you know, where you have, for example, either pipelines, you know, oil pipelines, or you have electricity pylons, or you have very large drains, the dangers for people living in that area are much more pronounced than for many other Kenyans.
From a distance, these urban ghettos don't tell much of a story, but take a closer look within and around these valleys of mud-packed structures and corrugated iron, and everything will slowly come to perspective. Most, if not all, these electricity and water connections running through the overlapping houses and cramped alleyways are illegally connected.
Mambo kijiji, biashara iko kijiji. Kijiji kuna watu wanaingizaga tu pesa kama wamekaa. Siku ile serikali itaamua kuvunja kijiji yote. Hiyo ndio siku yenye sasa government itajua na kuuza pesa mingi sana.
Sina kupea kwani 200 ni 200.
For 3 years, a group of daring Kenyans secretly recorded on-camera footage of illegal power and water businesses and networks in Kibera and Mathare informal settlements.
Ase huko mtaani mambo ilianza artificial. Kama silifanye na rene. Nalifanye na rene ile mtaangu brother.
Hiyo ni atia. Hiyo ni atia. Unalipa just mami ya ine. How?
Hiyo tuko kanjo huko. Sasa huko kwa kanjo huko ndio kwa main sasa. Lazima wagonge kitu kwanza. Gonga kitu sasa wanakuambia sasa tunakujoinia mahali hiyo, kwa hiyo bomba yenyewe wanakujoinia mahali maji inafanya nini? Natokea. Sasa wewe ujipange na ile hiyo pipe itafanya nini? Itapita mpaka penye unataka ifike. Kijiji. Hiyo na ghetto.
Our investigation revealed what seems to be a lucrative trade often run by individuals or groups of people, cartels.
Tutaki maneno bwana. Ama muweke tusi tufufue masaa zingine. Bwana sisi hii area yetu ndio security area.
Next time mkitaka kufanya kazi kama hii, mnakaa mapema.
Kuna wateja 150. Na wateja 150 inategemea. Kuna kama wale mimi najua wako kazi, au sasa wanalipanga 300.
The nature of the business requires a certain level of skill set, but its success relies heavily on trust and the right connections.
Sasa hata saa hii tuseme nikipiga simu, kuna wale watu wa Kenya Power wa emergency wakuja waniletee stima, ni peke yao iko, hawatakosa kuja.
Sio gari wanajenga masansi au ndio wanajenga hiyo product.
hii mtaa imejaa cartels. And that's why unaona maji, the rationing of water iko high because sasa cartels wanataka wauze maji na ile maji ya kukuja direct ya kufikia mwananchi inakuwa sasa ndio inawekwa like a boundary.
In these crime-ridden neighborhoods, the supply of illegal services is an opportunity, but money is the end goal.
Stima, polisi anachukua pesa. Utanauza bangi, polisi anachukua pesa. Changa, polisi anachukua pesa. Na kadhalika.
Cartels, service providers and police officers are in on it.
That 23 senior officials of the company were fired over a multi-million shilling scandal.
In Kenya, these kind of stories are not unusual. The players might change, but the game is still the same. In 2016 and 2017, Uncensored produced 2 harrowing investigative documentaries. Kanjo Kingdom, an appalling expose into an extortion ring run by officers from Nairobi County's notorious Inspectorate Department. Our other report, Inspector Fisi, targeted Nairobi's rogue traffic police officers, demanding and collecting bribes amounting to almost 500 million shillings per month from the public transport crews. This time, our prime focus is informal governance. We look into the gaps in governance that have allowed these informal structures not only to exist, but also to thrive.
Hapa mtaa yetu hapa si watu wengi wamefika kwa ofisi. Na venye tunaweza ongea tu tuone tu venye inakuwa hata bila kufika kwa ofisi yenyewe.
Mulika zezi sikudanganya. Mulika maybe zishe kwa hizi mastic kubwa lakini kwa slums huku mulika zezi.
The corruption and the lack of, the impunity that we have in these areas are really the cause of how they are maintained. We just don't have a proper strategy for making sure that people's dignity and their quality of life is raised at a cost that they can afford.
As we dig further into this illegality, it becomes more apparent that its existence is not just by chance, it's almost by design.
There's a whole infrastructure within these informal settlements to try and survive, but it is because the government has failed this segment of the population. So you can never see the provision of safe, reliable electricity or safe, reliable water.
Unaishi ukiwa na uoga all the time. Nikiongea nitakutwa. Sasa hata mtu mzuri unaona kitu mbaya inafanyika, lakini ile uoga uko nayo huwezi ongelelea.
Life choices in the urban ghettos is not very easy. I mean, it's not. You always have choices, but the choices are not the same kind of choices as people in middle class societies have. So there are certain rules, there are certain ways of doing things, there are certain cause and effects that happen, and it's not informal to them, it is very real.
It's said that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In the slums, that story writes itself daily.
Imeumiza watu wengi sana, imechoma nyumba mingi sana, imefanya watu wamepoteza vitu vingi.
Kwani yenye naweza nipiga shock? Gani iko moto? Kwanza hii inawaka hii. Light. Sishiki hapo.
These unauthorized connections might be a source of income for some.
Unajua kuna kitu mimi nashangaa.
Huwezi jiuliza aje wale hata wajamaliza mwaka na walipatikana. Unajua wale walitoa pesa mingi kuliko unyinyi. Juu wale walipatikana na wewe hujapatikana. Mbona ujiuze? Sukula kule ukishikwa ukubali ulishikwa lakini usijipeleke.
But to others, it's a constant reminder of a loss that they can never recover.
Watu wenye waliona tu life baba wakikufa ni wawili. Hata wananga amani. Mpaka ukikaa unafikirianga ingekuwa stima baba yetu angekuwa. Ingekuwa moto kuchomeka hiyo nyumba baba yetu angekuwa. Kitu inakujia hata siwezi lala, hata nikikaa peke yangu huwa nawaza sana. Sasa itapiti niende kana wenzangu. Ndio niziwaze sana. Lakini kaa peke yangu nawaza sana.
Kenyans will have to dig deeper in their pockets to cater for an increase in the cost of electricity.
It is an entire network of murky, corrupt dealings that finally Wanjiko has to bear the brunt of. And we see that in terms of our electricity bills. And yet electricity is really the most basic requirement for a country to industrialize, for people to be able to conduct their businesses and live their lives with a level of dignity.
It's a world where governance and systematic gaps have created opportunities for the corrupt to prosper while leaving the poor to pay the most for the least.
Hiyo machini ilikuwa hapa, mawe ilikuwa hapa, ikamgonga ikamruza hapa kwa maji. Si unaona sasa pipe vyenye zimewekwa, si unaona stima? Kwa nini kifo isipatikane tena hapo?
In the next episode, we dive into a reality that more or less evens the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Nilimpata hapa kama amelala. Alichukuliwa na wasamaria mema, wakampeleka wakifikiria hajakufa, wakimpeleka hospitali, lakini alikuwa amekufa tu.
Hi, my name is Joy Kirigia. I am a producer and reporter at Africa Uncensored. Thank you for watching this video to this point and for being our #1 supporter. We value you. To maintain our independence and continue to bring you in-depth stories, we need your financial support. We are requesting that you become a member of our channel or a patron on Patreon right now. The link with the instructions is on the screen and the description below. Alternatively, you can send us an Mpesa directly using the instructions below. Thank you.